The text message came through at exactly 11:47 p.m. Victoria Chen glanced at her phone mounted on the dashboard, the screen glowing with 3 words from her CFO. Deal is done. $500 million. 3 years of negotiation. She'd won. Again. She should have been watching the intersection. The delivery van ran the red light at 40 miles per hour. Victoria saw it for maybe half a second before the impact threw her world into chaos. Metal screamed. Glass exploded. Her head snapped sideways with such force that she heard something crack deep in her neck. Then darkness swallowed everything. When awareness returned, Victoria couldn't move. She tried to scream, but her throat produced nothing. Her fingers wouldn't curl. Her legs lay dead and useless beneath starched hospital sheets. Only her eyes worked, staring up at fluorescent lights that burned into her retinas like tiny suns. Machines beeped around her in a rhythm that seemed to mock her paralysis. Beep, beep, beep. You're alive, they said. But are you really? A doctor appeared above her, his face swimming into focus. He wore wire-rimmed glasses and had the tired eyes of someone who'd delivered bad news too many times. Severe traumatic brain injury, he said to someone Victoria couldn't see. A nurse, probably. The scans show minimal activity in the higher cortical regions. She's not in there anymore. The person she was? Gone. Victoria wanted to grab him by his white coat and shake him. I'm right here, you idiot. I'm screaming. Can't you hear me screaming? But her body refused every command her brain sent. She was a prisoner in her own flesh, sentenced to watch and listen while the world moved around her like she'd already died. The first visitor came that evening. Robert Mitchell, her chief financial officer. The man who'd sent that text message. He stood at the foot of her bed with 2 other board members, their voices low but not low enough. If she's incapacitated for 90 days, the succession clause activates, Robert said. Her shares get distributed according to the charter. Which means we'd have majority control, another voice added. Marcus somebody. Marcus from operations. Victoria had hired him 6 years ago. Do we know about the will? That was Jennifer from legal. Her attorneys already requesting power of attorney transfer. This could take months to sort out. But if she stays like this... Robert trailed off, but Victoria heard what he didn't say. If she stays like this, they divide her empire like vultures picking at a carcass. They talked for 7 more minutes. Not once did any of them speak to her. Not once did anyone say her name with anything resembling affection or grief. They discussed her assets, her properties, her stock portfolio. They never discussed her. When they left, Victoria lay in the darkness and felt something she hadn't experienced in 20 years. True, crushing loneliness. She'd built walls around herself after her ex-fiancé had tried to trap her with a pregnancy scare that turned out to be a lie designed to secure a bigger settlement. She'd learned that people wanted what she had, not who she was. So she'd become unreachable, untouchable. A CEO in an ivory tower. Now she'd give anything for just one person to see her as human. The next morning brought Trevor, her ex-fiancé, the man she'd almost married before she discovered he'd been feeding company secrets to a competitor while they were together. He stood by her bed for maybe 90 seconds. I hope you can't hear this, he said, his voice flat. But I never really loved you, Victoria. I loved what you represented. The penthouse. The private jets. The power. He adjusted his watch, an expensive piece she'd given him for his birthday. I always wondered if you knew that. If maybe that's why you kept everyone at arm's length after me. Guess we'll never know now. He left without touching her hand. Victoria stared at the ceiling and felt something crack inside her chest. Not physically. Worse. It was the sound of hope breaking. That afternoon, her attorney arrived with the hospital administrator. They stood in her room, discussing her care like she was a piece of furniture that needed to be stored somewhere. We're recommending transfer to Riverside Extended Care Facility, the administrator said. She's stable, but unresponsive. We need the bed for patients who can actually recover. Her attorney nodded. I'll begin the paperwork for long-term care arrangements. Her assets are substantial enough to cover quality facilities for years. Years. They were talking about warehousing her for years in some facility where she'd rot away while the world forgot she existed. Victoria tried with everything she had to move something, anything. A finger, a toe, an eyelid. Nothing responded. She was trapped so completely that she wanted to stop existing. What was the point of consciousness if no one knew you were conscious? What was the point of being alive if no one saw you as alive? The day bled into evening. Nurses came and went, their touches mechanical and efficient. They turned her to prevent bed sores. They adjusted her for. They checked her vitals. No one spoke to her. She was a body to maintain, not a person to comfort. Then, just after 10 p.m. when the hospital had gone quiet, the door opened again. Sorry, a woman's voice said softly. I know you're trying to sleep, but this floor cleaner smells like expired lemons, so, fair warning. Victoria's eyes tracked toward the sound. A woman in navy blue scrubs pushed a cleaning cart into the room. She was maybe 40, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and the kind of face that looked like it smiled easily. She caught Victoria's open eyes and didn't look away uncomfortably like the nurses did. Hey there, the woman said. I'm Elena. I'll try to be quick and quiet, okay? She started mopping in the corner, humming something under her breath. A lullaby, maybe. Something soft and warm that wrapped around Victoria like the first gentle thing she'd experienced since the accident. Elena worked in silence for a few minutes, then paused by the window. You know what drives me crazy about hospitals? Elena said, not looking at Victoria but speaking to her like a real person. They keep these windows locked tight. Like fresh air is dangerous. My grandmother always said sick people need 3 things: medicine, rest, and air that doesn't smell like disinfectant. She cracked the window open just an inch. Cool night air drifted in, carrying the scent of rain and city streets. Victoria hadn't realized how desperately she'd needed that small change until it happened. The difference between a tomb and a room. Elena continued cleaning, that humming returning. After a moment, she spoke again. You kind of remind me of my sister. She had the same stubborn chin. Maria? She passed away last year. Breast cancer. It moved so fast, you know? One day she's complaining about being tired, 6 months later. Elena's voice caught. Sorry, I shouldn't dump this on you. But the nurses kept saying at the end that Maria couldn't hear us anymore. That we should just let her go. But I'd sit there and read to her anyway. Old magazines, grocery store tabloids, whatever. And sometimes I swear I'd see her eyes move, like she was listening. Like she was still in there fighting. Victoria felt something hot behind her own eyes. Tears she couldn't shed. I think people can always hear, Elena said quietly. Even when everyone says they can't. I think that's the cruelest part. Being trapped while everyone talks around you like you're already gone. She moved closer to the bed and adjusted Victoria's pillow with gentle hands. So I'm going to talk to you like you're listening. Because maybe you are. And if you are, you deserve to know someone sees you. For the first time since the accident, Victoria felt something other than despair. A tiny spark of connection. Of being treated like a human being instead of an obstacle or an asset. Elena finished cleaning and paused at the door. I work nights, so I'll see you tomorrow. Sleep well, okay? And don't let those doctors convince you to give up. Sometimes the world needs stubborn women with stubborn chins. When Elena left, Victoria stared at the ceiling and felt that spark grow just a little brighter. One person in this entire hospital saw her as something worth talking to. The next night, Elena returned. And the night after that, she'd clean the room while chatting about her day, about rude patients and broken vending machines, and the hospital politics that nobody cared about except the people living through them. Sometimes she'd complain about her supervisor. Sometimes she'd share a funny story. But always, she spoke to Victoria like the conversation was real. On the 4th night, Elena brought someone with her. I hope this is okay, Elena said, rolling her cart in with a small figure trailing behind. My babysitter canceled, and I couldn't leave Sofia home alone. Sofia, this is Miss Victoria. She's resting, but I bet she'd like to meet you. A little girl peered around Elena's legs. She couldn't have been more than 6 or 7, with dark eyes and pigtails held up by bright yellow hair ties. She clutched a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days, one ear hanging by threads. Hi, Miss Victoria, Sofia whispered. She moved closer to the bed, her small face serious. Mommy says sometimes people just need someone to sit with them. So I'm going to sit right here, okay? Me and Mr. Carrots. The child dragged a chair to the bedside and climbed up, settling in with the quiet confidence of someone who'd done this before. Elena worked while Sofia hummed the same lullaby her mother had been humming. After a few minutes, Sofia pulled out a small pack of crayons and paper from her backpack. I'm going to draw you a picture, she announced. Do you like flowers? I'm really good at flowers. And suns. My teacher says my sons are the happiest sons in the whole class. Victoria watched the little girl work, her tongue poking out in concentration. The simple act of watching a child draw felt like the most normal thing that had happened in days. No calculations about her net worth. No discussions of power of attorney. Just a child drawing a picture with worn-down crayons. 20 minutes later, Sofia held up her masterpiece. A bright yellow sun dominated the top of the page. Below it, a red flower with green leaves. And at the bottom, two stick figures holding hands. One tall, one small. That's you and me, Sofia explained seriously. For when you wake up, so you know you have a friend. She placed the drawing carefully on the bedside table where Victoria could see it. The paper had a crease down the middle and one corner was torn, but Victoria had never seen anything more beautiful in her life. Deals worth millions of dollars. Properties spanning continents. Private jets and penthouse views. None of it compared to this child's simple gift of connection. We should go, Mija, Elena said softly. Miss Victoria needs her rest. Bye, Miss Victoria, Sofia whispered. I'll come back soon, okay? Mr. Carrots says you're very nice. After they left, Victoria stared at that drawing until exhaustion pulled her under. But even in sleep, she saw those two stick figures. Connected. Together. The pattern continued. Elena came each night, sometimes with Sofia, sometimes alone. She'd open the window that the day nurses always closed. She'd adjust the pillow the way Victoria's neck needed but couldn't ask for. She'd talk about her life, about raising a daughter alone, about the small struggles and smaller victories that made up her days. On the sixth night, Elena was unusually quiet. She cleaned mechanically, without her usual commentary. Finally, she sank into the chair beside Victoria's bed. My husband died 4 years ago, Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. Javier. Construction accident. Scaffolding collapse. He kissed Sofia goodbye that morning and told her he'd bring home pizza for dinner. He never came home. Her hands twisted together in her lap. Everyone had advice after. People said I should move on. Find another husband. Someone to provide for Sofia and me. Like Javier was just a paycheck. Like Sofia just needs food and shelter and she'll be fine. Elena's voice hardened. But that's not what children need. That's not what anyone needs. She looked at Victoria then, really looked at her. Sofia doesn't need a provider. She needs someone who sees her. Who remembers that she hates carrots but loves broccoli because she says it looks like tiny trees. Who knows she's afraid of thunderstorms but brave enough to sleep alone as long as we leave the hallway light on. Who notices when she's quiet because she's worried about something versus quiet because she's just thinking. Elena reached out and gently took Victoria's limp hand. That's what we all need, really. Not someone to fix us or save us. Just someone who actually sees us. Who knows we're real and complicated and worth paying attention to. She squeezed Victoria's hand softly. I see you, Miss Victoria. I don't know what your life was like before this, but I see you now. And you matter. You're not just a body in a bed. You're a person who deserves to be treated like one. Victoria felt those tears again, the ones her body wouldn't let fall. In that moment, she understood something fundamental. She'd spent 2 decades building an empire to prove her worth. She'd accumulated wealth and power like armor against the world. But this woman, this night shift custodian, who earned maybe a fraction of what Victoria's assistant made, had given her something infinitely more valuable. Recognition. The simple acknowledgement that she existed as a human being. For the first time since the accident, Victoria didn't want to give up. Not for her company. Not for revenge against the vultures circling her assets. But for this. For the possibility that maybe she could learn to be seen. To be human in a way she'd forgotten how to be. The next morning shattered everything. Victoria woke to voices in the hallway. The hospital administrator. Dr. Patel. Robert Mitchell. She recognized their tones before she caught the words. The board has requested an update on Miss Chen's condition, Robert was saying. We need to make some decisions about her care moving forward. Her condition remains unchanged, Dr. Patel replied. No response to stimuli. No signs of awareness. I'm afraid the prognosis is poor. Then we should proceed with the transfer to Riverside, the administrator said. We've held this bed for nearly a week. We have patients who can actually benefit from acute care. When would the transfer happen? Robert's voice held barely concealed eagerness. We can have her moved by tomorrow morning. The paperwork is ready. We just need her attorney's signature on the long-term care arrangements. Tomorrow. They were going to ship her off tomorrow to some facility where she'd be forgotten completely. Where Elena wouldn't find her. Where Sofia's drawings wouldn't reach her. Where she'd rot away in total isolation until her body finally gave up. No, no. Victoria screamed inside her head. Please, somebody, see me. I'm here. I'm here. But her body remained frozen. Her voice stayed silent. Her prison held firm. That evening, Elena came in looking troubled. She'd heard the news. Victoria could see it in the way her hands trembled slightly as she started her cleaning routine. They're moving you tomorrow, Elena said finally, her voice thick. To Riverside. I know that place. My grandmother was there for 6 months before. She stopped, swallowed hard. It's not a bad place. The nurses are kind. But it's where people go when everyone's given up on them. Elena abandoned her cleaning cart and sat heavily in the chair. I haven't given up on you, Miss Victoria. Sofia made you 14 more pictures this week. She talks about you at breakfast. She tells her stuffed animals that you're her friend, who's just very tired right now. Elena's voice cracked. She has so much faith that you'll wake up and see all her drawings. That you'll talk to her. That you'll be okay. She leaned forward, her eyes searching Victoria's face desperately. So if you're in there, if you can hear me even a little bit, if there's any part of you that's fighting, please, please don't let them decide for you. Don't let them put you somewhere where you'll be forgotten. Fight, Miss Victoria. Fight like hell. Elena stayed for an hour past the end of her shift, just sitting there holding Victoria's hand. When she finally had to leave, she placed something on the pillow beside Victoria's head. Sofia's latest drawing. This one showed 3 figures. Elena, Sofia, and Victoria. They stood under a rainbow. At the bottom, in careful first-grade letters, Sofia had written, "Friends forever." After Elena left, Victoria lay in the darkness and faced the choice she'd been avoiding. She could let go, drift away into whatever came next. Let the transfer happen. Let her body slowly shut down in some anonymous room while her company was carved up by people who'd never cared about her. It would be easy, peaceful even, or she could fight. Not for Chen Global Properties. Not for her fortune. Not even for revenge against Robert and Trevor and all the others who'd shown their true colors. But for something simpler and somehow more important. She could fight for the chance to thank Elena. To tell Sofia that her drawings meant everything. To be seen and to see others in return. To be human in a way she'd never quite managed before the accident. Victoria had built an empire by never surrendering. By pushing through every obstacle with sheer stubborn will. Everyone said that stubbornness was what had made her successful. But maybe, just maybe, that same stubbornness could make her human. She focused every fragment of consciousness she possessed on a single goal. Move. Something. Anything. Prove you're in here. Hours crawled past. Midnight came and went. Her body remained frozen, unresponsive. But Victoria didn't stop trying. She pictured her hand. Imagined the nerves firing, the muscles contracting. Just one finger. Just a twitch. Anything to show she was present. At 3 in the morning, something happened. A sensation. Distant, like feeling through heavy gloves, but real. Her right index finger. She could almost feel it. She pushed harder. Visualized the movement with every scrap of willpower she possessed. The finger twitched. Just barely. A millimeter of movement that no one was awake to see. But it was real. She'd done it. She could do it again. Victoria spent the next 3 hours practicing that tiny movement. Getting stronger. Getting more control. By the time dawn light started creeping through the window Elena always opened, she could move the finger on command. Small movements. Nothing dramatic. But undeniable. At 6 a.m., the orderlies arrived to prep her for transfer. They moved efficiently, talking to each other about weekend plans and sports scores. Neither looked at her face. Dr. Patel came in at 6:30 to do a final examination before the transfer. He checked her pupils with a penlight. Tested her reflexes with his little hammer. Made notes on his tablet. Unchanged, he said to the nurse. No response to any stimuli. Let's get her ready for transport at 7. Now. It had to be now. Victoria screamed inside her mind and pushed every molecule of strength into that single finger. Move. 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 Her finger twitched against the sheet. Dr. Patel was turning away. He hadn't seen it. Again. Victoria tried again, harder this time. Her finger moved. Then moved again. A clear, deliberate motion. Doctor, the nurse said suddenly. Her hand. Did you see that? Dr. Patel turned back, frowning. He watched Victoria's hand. Probably just a muscle spasm. It happens with. Victoria moved her finger 3 times in rapid succession. Up, down, up, down, up, down. The doctor's face went pale. That's not a spasm. He grabbed his penlight and shone it in her eyes. Miss Chen, if you can hear me, move your finger again. Victoria moved it. Once, twice, 3 times. Oh my God, the nurse whispered. Get neurology down here now, Dr. Patel barked. Cancel the transfer. Cancel everything. He leaned over Victoria, his previous exhaustion replaced by intense focus. Miss Chen, I need you to do something for me. If you can hear me and understand me, blink your eyes. Victoria had been trying to blink for days. Now, with adrenaline flooding her system, with the absolute desperation of someone who'd almost been buried alive, she focused everything on her eyelids. They felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds each. Slowly, painfully, her right eye closed, then opened, then closed again. She's in there, Dr. Patel said, his voice filled with something between wonder and horror. She's been in there this whole time. This isn't a coma. This is locked-in syndrome. He looked at the nurse with stricken eyes. We were going to ship her off to long-term care. We were going to warehouse her. And she's been conscious through all of it. The room exploded into controlled chaos. Neurologists arrived. New tests were ordered. Machines Victoria had never seen before were wheeled in. Questions were fired at her that she could now answer with blinks and finger movements. 1 blink for yes, 2 for no. It was exhausting. Each tiny movement felt like pushing a boulder up a mountain. But Victoria pushed anyway because the alternative was going back to that hell of being invisible. By noon, the diagnosis was confirmed. Locked-in syndrome. Complete paralysis except for vertical eye movement and minimal right-hand control. But fully conscious. Fully aware. Fully present. Robert Mitchell showed up at 2 p.m. His face was carefully arranged into concern, but Victoria could see the calculation behind his eyes. A conscious Victoria meant the succession clause didn't apply. It meant she still controlled her shares. It meant his plans were ruined. Victoria, he said, standing at the foot of her bed. This is incredible news. We were so worried about you. The board has been. Victoria moved her finger twice. No. Dr. Patel, who'd stayed close since the discovery, stepped forward. She's extremely fatigued. Perhaps you could visit another time. Of course, Robert said smoothly. I just wanted her to know we're all rooting for her recovery. After he left, Dr. Patel pulled up a chair. I owe you an apology. Multiple apologies. We misdiagnosed you. We discussed your care and your assets in front of you like you weren't there. We almost. He stopped, his jaw tight. We failed you completely. Victoria blinked once. Yes, they had failed her. But she didn't have energy for anger. She had something more important to ask. She moved her working finger slowly, trying to spell something out on the sheet. It took forever, but Dr. Patel was patient. E-L-E-N-A. Elena? Dr. Patel asked. Who's Elena? Victoria moved her finger again, frustrated by how long everything took. She managed to spell, custodian. Understanding dawned on the doctor's face. The night shift custodian? You want to see her? 1 blink. Yes. Desperately yes. I'll have someone find her, Dr. Patel promised. The next 6 weeks were a special kind of torture. Physical therapy that made her want to scream. Speech therapy where she could barely produce sounds that resembled words. Occupational therapy, teaching her to use a letterboard to communicate by pointing with her slowly recovering right hand. Every tiny gain required monumental effort. Some days she wanted to give up. Some days the pain and exhaustion made her wish she'd just stayed silent in that bed. But then she'd remember Sofia's drawings. Elena's voice telling her to fight. And she'd push through 1 more exercise, 1 more therapy session, 1 more impossible task. Elena came to visit on the 3rd day. She walked into Victoria's new room in the rehabilitation wing and stopped dead in the doorway. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hands shaking. They told me, Elena said quietly. They told me you were awake. That you'd been awake the whole time. She moved closer to the bed. I'm so sorry. I should have known. I should have seen. Victoria raised her finger with enormous effort and pointed to the letterboard a nurse had propped up nearby. Elena brought it closer. Slowly, painfully, Victoria spelled out, Y-O-U-D-I-D-S-E-M-E. Elena's face crumpled. She sat in the chair and took Victoria's hand just like she had all those nights. Sofia's outside. She made you 17 new pictures. She's been carrying them around in her backpack waiting for you to wake up. Can she come in? Victoria blinked once. Yes. Sofia burst into the room like a small hurricane, her backpack bouncing. Miss Victoria, you're awake. I knew you would wake up. I told Mommy and Mr. Carrots and everyone. She climbed into the chair and started pulling out crumpled drawings. Look, this one is you at the park. And this one is you eating ice cream. And this one is you and me and Mommy at the beach, even though we've never been to the beach, but maybe we can go someday. Victoria watched this whirlwind of a child spread drawings across her bed and felt something she hadn't felt in 20 years. Pure, uncomplicated joy. Not the satisfaction of closing a deal. Not the pleasure of crushing a competitor. Just the simple happiness of being with people who saw her as a person worth knowing. Over the next weeks, Victoria made other changes. She fired Robert Mitchell via letterboard, spelling out each letter with grim satisfaction. She ordered a complete audit of her company, uncovering 3 other executives who'd been positioning themselves for her death. She replaced her entire board with people who actually understood what loyalty meant. But more importantly, she created something new. The Javier Morales Foundation, named after Elena's husband, dedicated to supporting families of workers killed in workplace accidents. Full funeral coverage, college funds for their children, mental health services, job placement assistance, everything that Elena had needed 4 years ago and hadn't received. The first beneficiary was Sofia Morales. Full college fund, pre-K through graduate school. Elena had refused at first, pride warring with practicality, until Victoria spelled out, P-L-E-S-E, L-E-T-M-E, D-O-T-H-I-S. You don't owe us anything, Elena had protested. Victoria spent 10 exhausting minutes spelling out her response. Y-O-U, S-A-V-E-D, M-Y, L-I-F-E, L-E-T, M-E, S-A-Y, Y-O-U. 12 weeks after her awakening, Victoria could speak in short, halting sentences. Her right hand had regained enough function to feed herself with adaptive utensils. She could sit up in a wheelchair for several hours at a time. The doctors said she might never walk again, might never regain full speech, might need assistance for the rest of her life. She didn't care. She was alive. She was seen. She was connected to people who valued her for reasons that had nothing to do with her bank account. On a Tuesday afternoon in late spring, Elena brought Sofia for a visit. The little girl had just finished first grade and came armed with her report card and more drawings. They sat in the rehabilitation center's garden, where Victoria could feel actual sunlight on her face. "Oh, Ace," Victoria said slowly, looking at Sofia's report card. Each word still required concentration, but they came easier now. "So proud. My teacher says I'm the best artist in the class," Sofia announced. "I told her it's because I practice by drawing pictures for you." Elena sat on the bench beside Victoria's wheelchair, her hand resting gently on Victoria's arm. "We're going to the park after this. Want to come with us? The accessible paths are really nice, and there's this duck pond Sofia loves." Victoria looked at these 2 people who'd given her back her humanity. The custodian and her daughter. The people who'd seen her when she was invisible. Who'd treated her like she mattered when the world had written her off as already dead. "Yes," Victoria said. Then, with more strength, "I'd like that." For the first time and longer than she could remember, Victoria Chen smiled. Not the practice CEO smile she'd perfected for boardroom battles. Not the careful expression she'd worn like armor for 2 decades. A real smile. The kind that came from somewhere deep and genuine and entirely human. They walked to the park together, Elena pushing the wheelchair while Sofia skipped ahead, pointing out flowers and birds and clouds that looked like animals. Victoria watched this child who'd shown her what unconditional acceptance looked like and felt something shift in her chest. Not healing exactly. Something better. Growth. The kind that only happened when you let people in. When you let yourself be seen, truly seen, in all your broken, imperfect, struggling humanity. The sun felt warm on her face. Sofia's laughter rang out across the park. Elena hummed that lullaby under her breath. And Victoria Chen, who'd once measured her worth in millions of dollars and corporate conquests, understood finally what it meant to be rich. So if this story moved you, if it made you think about the people in your life who truly see you, Hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that matter. Drop a comment below about someone who saw you when you felt invisible. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Because we all deserve to be seen. We all deserve to matter. And sometimes it takes losing everything to understand what we really have. Victoria had built an empire. But in losing it, she'd found something infinitely more valuable. She'd found her way home to herself. And she'd learned that true strength wasn't in standing alone. It was in allowing yourself to be held.